Welcome to our Transcend Media Service viewers. My name is Kimberlye Kowalczyk, and I have the privilege to speak today with Professor Jan Oberg, who is Director and Co-founder of the Transnational Foundation for Peace and Future Research. Thank you for joining us.
That's my pleasure.
So I'd like to talk with you today about nuclear proliferation. And first, to ask you the question, is nuclear proliferation the problem?
No, it's not the problem. I would say it's a problem, but the problem is nuclear possession. It's the existence of nuclear weapons. With those who have them, as we know, I mean, it's been the basic countries that had nuclear weapons since 1945, America, Russia, China, England, France, and then the newcomers, so to speak, Pakistan, India, Israel, etc. And the reason I say that this is the main problem is, of course, they are the ones who are threatening the rest of the world, not those who don't have them. The second thing is that we have the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which states that since we do not want proliferation, those who have nuclear weapons shall negotiate in good faith for general and complete disarmament of them. They should get rid of them as a quid pro quo for other countries who do not have them yet not to obtain them. And since the nuclear haves have cheated on this since 1970, there's no doubt in my mind that the main problem is the nuclear powers who have ignored their obligations towards the international community. And if the rest of the world sees how they behave and what doctrines they have and how they have threatened with nuclear weapons and think of the dangers of having a nuclear war, I find it totally predictable that there will be a strong pressure on these. They will feel that they would like to have nuclear weapons for the simple reason that others have them, and those who should not have them have kept on having them and threatened them. So if you want Iran to get nuclear weapons, just keep on telling them that you will bomb them and use nuclear weapons on them. Then you're totally sure that they will get it at some point. So you basically decide these things yourself, but I think you decide who is going to be your enemy if you pressure people to, Secondly, we must not forget that these are weapons of terror. It has always, for 55 years, between 1945 when they were introduced into the world up to 2000 or so, it's been called the balance of terror. Now, everybody recognized, including them themselves and nuclear doctrine theorists, etc., that it was terrorism if we ever used nuclear weapons. Terrorism is being defined by deliberately targeting civilians to achieve a political goal. Now, have you noticed that the word terrorism has now been exclusively used since 9/11 for small-scale terrorism, like Al-Qaeda, whereas the deliberate, everyday, ongoing planning of new weapons and doctrines for killing millions of people in the nuclear system is no longer called nuclear terrorism or balance of terror. But the mega terrorists in the world are the nuclear states. And that's the problem, back to your question. That is a problem that somebody else wants to have this, be members of the same prestigious club. It's totally predictable. I'm not saying it's good, but according to realpolitik thinking, if somebody else has these kinds of very powerful weapons and prestige-given weapons, then somebody else would like to have them.
Professor Oberg, now you're at the European Center for Peace Studies in Stadtschleining, Austria, teaching a course. And today you explained this balance of terror with some diagrams that you drew on a whiteboard. Maybe you could show us.
Yes, I'll be happy to. So let me try to explain the classical theory that worked for 55 years that was called the balance of terror. Now you have two parties here, A and B, and they both have nuclear weapons. They have them on aircraft, they have them in missiles, missiles in silos, and they have them on submarines. They both have the AMS. So imagine that A starts a nuclear first strike. It will blow out a lot of people, kill maybe 10 million people, or whatever we assume. But they will not be able to kill every nuclear weapon in the silos and on the planes, in the airports, and in the submarines. So they will be hit somewhere out there from the ocean, perhaps, or something. A will be hit back in a second strike. That is a retaliatory second strike. That means that if A starts, A knows that he will be having his own people killed. That is the balance of terror. Balance of terror. Terror, that is the terrorism in it, because you kill millions of people who are innocent citizens. Now, this was what should prevent, that should deter any party from beginning. It was also called MAD, from beginning a war. It was also called MAD, mutually assured destruction. MAD. If I start a war, I know I will also be destroyed, at least partly, so that will not be a good thing. It was committing suicide, actually, in a way. Now, the ballistic missile defense does a very, very destabilizing service to this old-fashioned classical deterrence theory. Because if A puts up a protective shield around itself by the ballistic missile defense, does so in Europe too, for instance, in Poland and the Czech Republic and all that, the idea is that when B tries to retaliate back, his missiles will be shut down here, or here, or here, or here, or whatever. That means you can think of starting, conducting, and winning a nuclear war. Now, this is what was introduced in 2001, or 2, I'm not quite sure about that, in the new nuclear and warfighting doctrine of the United States. It's a completely new thing in human history. And it moves towards what Reagan already planned, which is called NOT instead of MAD. NOT means nuclear use theory. This means that nuclear weapons will more likely be used now than they would during the 55 years or so of the balance of terror. Why? Because if you think that it will be technically possible to shoot down everything that comes against you as a retaliation, then you are less deterred from starting a war than you are if you know that it'll cost 50 or 100 million of your own people their lives. This is why the ballistic missile defense in Poland and Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, Greenland and Britain is an extremely aggressive destabilizing theory that the Russians and everybody else have very good reasons to be upset about, and this should never be implemented. MAD had some kind of logic, but NOT is a fascist theory. It means we want to start, conduct, and win a nuclear war. And there can never be a political goal that justifies the killing of 50, 100, or 200 million people. And it is gross terrorism. So if we talk about Al-Qaeda, we're talking about, you know, this small compared with this big mega terrorism, which is built into NATO's strategy. NATO is also, since it's American-led, but NATO as such is also an alliance that argues for being the first to use nuclear weapons even against a conventional attack. So this is why the whole new thing here is not defensive, it's deception of people when it's called missile defense. Yes, it is a defense against incoming missiles, but against those who try to retaliate, so that increases your propensity to start a war. Very quickly, it has to do with also giving people another sense of security. This is one great manipulation of people to believe that that type of system I just explained to you would be giving people security. But in order to take something away from people that they have been told for 50 years give them security, you have to devise some kind of, you know, tied-in system with United Nations conflict management, peace education, defensive defense, normal conventional defense, non-violent defense. You have to make layers of defense of nation states or regions so that people do not feel defenseless. I mean, it is in many ways a dangerous world. You cannot just take things away from people and say they should be happy without them. But it's important to have a public enlightenment and public education saying nuclear weapons are constructed by the military, industrial, media, academic complex. And it has nothing to do with democracy, there's no transparency, and it does not give you security. And then move on from there to alternatives. Mm-hmm. I do not believe in a totally disarmed world, but I do believe in a world in which we could protect and defend and create safety and human security in a much smarter way and costing much less.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
That was my pleasure.
This is Transnational Media Service. My name is Kimberlye Kowalczyk. Thank you for watching.